It's getting a little cooler, isn't it? Crickets are still going on. In fact, it's going to get like those green shoots. They're going to freeze. Societal crickets are going to freeze if we don't warm it up by doing what we need to do and responding to what we need to respond to. But, you know, I'm so thrilled. The end of the world as we knew it happened, 2 days ago? And it's going to happen yesterday and then tonight when we get the super blood moon. And I feel fine. Do you understand what the point here is, folks? We get all these doomsdayers just talking about all this stuff. And if it happens, you know, which one of us is going to stop it if it was to all happen? Now, I get into the ideas and thoughts all just as much as everybody. In fact, it's a little bit of an escape to think of the fantastic things that could all happen. But there's a reality that's approaching us that we have to deal with. That all these things, for as neat as they might be, are pretty big persuasions away from what we have to be doing. And while even last night I went out to prepare myself for seeing the blood moon for this tonight, I wanted to make sure where the moon was, at what time, knowing that it's going to probably come up about a half hour later or 45 minutes later tonight. Where am I going to see that thing? What did it look like? And I was gifted by seeing something I hadn't really noticed before, a moon that was whiter than I've ever seen. It was so white I couldn't hardly make it out for the clouds that were working its way through. It was working its way through. And then how neat and subtle the sky is right as the sun was setting. The subtle purples and reds and blacks and things that's in the sky. I'm grateful that I can actually see that still. So there's a wonder about that I'm going to try and make it tonight to see the super blood moon. And while I do not believe in the doomsdayers talking about all what they're saying, I do believe there's people in the world that utilize these things, and it can be historically shown that they use it, and it seems to actually, even if it just drives them to continue to come against you. This is another evidence, a sign in the sky, that they're still there. They're still using it, and all the other people around it are looking at that to go and tell you that you need to be more worried about their doomsday boogeymen than the fact of the action that comes around these orientations. In fact, you're looking at the blood moon tonight if you get to see it. It's something that's only happened, if I remember right. What was those stories we were talking about? When they were all coming out, what was it, last year or so? They were saying there's going to be a couple lips coming after us. I guess we're going to get a big smooch with a couple lips. But we were talking about that tetrad. And the question was, with all these doomsayers, was it actually instead of a couple lips and a big smooch, we're going to have an apocalypse? But they explained at that time how rare this event is. Really fascinating how I look around my life and see how many things we've been witness to that really don't happen that much. Not very many other people in the world have seen the things we've seen in the skies. And not to some doomsday thing, it's just what goes on, just the orientations, just to give us an insight how ordered things are, how undramatic things are, despite the fact that they're very dynamic. You consider the sun itself. How does that thing exist? But we were told this is the last step of a blood moon condition. These are where the Earth sits between the sun and the moon it reflects the horizon line light color from the Earth on its surface, which is all the sunsets, if you will, all around the Earth that are going on at the time because of the way the light works. That just was phenomenal. And I don't know if you've seen it, but it really almost brings that moon right up to where you almost feel like you can touch it. You can see more 3 dimensions to it. It really doesn't look so flat then. That pretty neat. Really a neat thing. We're going to be able to see, I think we're going to be able to see it right at the horizon. It'll be as big as visually it ever looks. And hopefully we're going to see it probably it'll already be into the blood moon part, maybe even leaving it. But it should be a very neat thing to see. And whether or not that's going to cause the asteroids to come down on our heads, I couldn't say yes or no. I don't think so. Whether or not there's a group of people in the world using these to stage what they're doing to you, I can almost guarantee that's happening. And I can't guarantee it to the point that I can prove it. I can just tell you, look at the evidence. And then you decide. So at the point we have these doomsayers and all these things, it's really frustrating. And I'm talking now amongst the broadcasters that are within the world and the internet that would speak about these doomsday things, that lump everything that goes on into some end of the world scenario that we're not going to do anything about anyway at some point. And if it doesn't happen, then we've wasted a lot of time. And I say wasted a lot of time because it's not that nothing's going on. It's just nothing catastrophic naturally is going on. It's all man-made that's going on that's catastrophic. And I'm going to ask you all for all you will do, whether or not you broadcast and promote the broadcast that I say, and I've told you I'm not real good at all that. I mean, really, some of this stuff is way beyond me. I don't even know. I feel like I'm all thumbs when I get into a social network area, and I'm beginning to agree with Grimner that, like Twitter, it looks like it's like talking to your TV. There's just no really response, so I'm not really adept at this, but for those of you that promote the broadcast for me, I really do appreciate it, that we are in some dire times, folks. I don't know how to impress you with this. I know I come with I've done this, literally 3 decades of earnest research to find out what the heck happened to America when I got the rose-colored glasses slapped from my eyes. And that I know I have a foundation behind me that's not controvertible by anyone at this point. I didn't go at this lying to myself. I really was naive enough to believe there was an America that we were more than just gave, but we were actually allowed to exercise. And 1 year, 3 decades ago or so, I don't even know what it is now. I don't really keep track. I just know it's been those decades. That fairy tale really ended. The voice of reason came into my life at the point of 5 cops that were going to kill me, as you now see happens today. And as I've said once before, I'll just remind you that not 6 months later, I believe the gentleman's name was Lee Cole. He was having a pharmaceutical collapse problem where he had driven on the highway from a long way away to come into the town and stop at the state police office because he was having trouble. His medications were had worn out, and he was in some pretty dire trouble. That he knocked on the door of the state police, and they were afraid of him for some reason. And by that night, he was dead. He was driving in a little pickup, and they ended up shooting him 23 times in the back, through his pickup, the back window wall of the pickup, through his seat, and killed him. And that was me 6 months earlier had it gone that way. That's when we were first into the point where the police became the military in my witness. And that's why I said, where's America? This doesn't happen in America. So here we are now, 3 decades or so later, and it's gotten worse. It hasn't gotten better. It was exactly what I was being told. And so I come from there with all this knowledge that I've been trying to find out really what's gone on. And I know I come at a different level. I know that's the fact. There's just no way you listen, anybody who studies anything, you go to anybody who studies anything for any length of time, they come pretty knowledgeable with it. And that's kind of where I'm at. Whether I have a shingle to show you or whether I can formalize these things, I think you understand the point. Any tradesman, applying themselves with proper guidance is going to become very good at what they do, and there's a lot of tricks that they learn, a lot of things they learn that are just really under their belt, that can't really be communicated all the time. And you see it when you involve yourself with that, you see it yourself when you do it, and that's why that's the important part. You have to get involved. I can talk a lot, and I know I talk maybe beyond what people understand, but I don't know what else to do. I just need to get the information out to you. That we're in that time, folks. We got these broadcasters that will focus you on the flashy things. Listen, Jade Helm, the blood moon, the Pope's in town. Well, yeah, I'm talking about the Pope in town, but not because it's the Pope in town. See, I'm not talking about Jade Helm. I'm telling you that there are some other things that it means that it might be doing. These things are in our face to give us the sign, to knock the rose-colored glasses off your face and saying, folks, it's time to act. That I would ask you all that are listening and do listen, maybe look around the internet to find all these hosts. Go back in the last year and find all the hosts that were completely doomsday sayers. And that's going to be quite a few of them. And maybe write them a note and say, stop it. Just get off the air. If you're not going to talk about solutions, and I don't mean solutions as what we hear people think is solutions, but I mean get down in the streets and get down in your government and get down in your own self, in your own house. You don't teach people how to do that. You don't deserve to be taken up the bandwidth. You don't need. You are not serving anybody's help purpose. You can send markonthebeast@yahoo.com if I'm one of those broadcasters. I don't think that I am. But if I am, let me know about that. That we need people to show us what needs to be done, not the next fantasy boogeyman coming down the road. Those are easy to see. Those trends are easy to understand. It's much more difficult to do something about what the meaning of those apparent illusions are. That I'm asking you maybe to look at this, if we make it through the blood moon and Monday comes around and we're still looking at the same reality illusion show, stage, control grid coming on us, and none of those things of doomsday have come on us, you might be good to contact all those that told you that this was coming. Go to the mountain and wait for the aliens. Sit on a rock and anticipate your navel a bit before, so that you get sucked up in the wind. Folks, you need to stop. You need to communicate that these people are not helping us. They're not helping you. They're not helping anybody else. They're wasting everybody's time. And there needs to almost be a paucity of information so that people start looking around again and saying, well, what do we need to know? Because I do believe the pressure's on us, and whether or not we fully see it, we sense it. Just that gut feeling that we get. We don't quite know where it is. We can't put our finger on it. But you know what? I've known quite a few people that have said that, and I can point to a motive force in the world that's causing this. It may not be the only thing. I may not see it all, but I see that, and I know that we've engaged what that part that I see, and I've got involved with people that also can get engaged to see that, and it makes a difference. It's so little and so small and so few. It's kind of like a dinghy in the ocean trying to calm that ocean. But you know what? Maybe we're not there to calm the ocean. Maybe we're there to make it past the ocean. That's there to scare us off and give us fear that we don't go ahead and set out for the better place that was meant for us. It's there. We got the glimpses. And so I'm always disappointed a bit to see that more people are more interested to listen to broadcasters that will do the doomsayer thing, the boogeyman. Not put together that those are signs of things that you need to really understand. Not that you can do anything about that, but that it tells you that there's a reality underneath it. Like and I'm not saying my observations any more powerful than anybody else's observation, but for me, 9/11, those towers coming down was a they went and done it moment for me. It wasn't how they done it or how could they do it, or no, they went and done it. The writing was on the wall. That was for serious a notice that they were coming in earnest against us. Whomever did it, however they did it. Now, I'm interested to find out, how do you pulverize two big buildings like that and make them fall like dust at close to freeze-fall speed? I'd like to know how another building that was never hit by anything falls at free-fall speed. Yeah, I'd like to know how that was done, that it was done, and why. Who would be behind that if that's how it happened, since we know that would be a man-made destruction, right? Pull it? Yes, I have all those questions. But you know what? Focusing on that for the last 14 years now has gotten all those minds focused on things that'll never, ever get them to discuss or look at and formulate a plan to stop what's on us today and against us today. What I started now to talk about in the last few broadcasts, where now this guy in the Pope has popped up. As I told you in the first of the year, I said, here it comes. This is the year they decide to expose what's been going on. And I say that from the perspective of me realizing that the infiltration, the usurpation is a foreign one on the concept of what America could have been. And I got there by somehow when I was looking for where America went. I did something. I went down to a university. This is before I even knew about the internet. This is even before I was back into that. See, I was out in a countryside. There was not much connection. I decided to do that years before that. I just wanted to, I saw the world wasn't the place, the in-town cities were not the place I wanted to be. So I moved to a lesser place. I didn't know about technology, so my only reference was libraries. When I first got into this, I had to go to a university in their law library to start reading these things. And from, I don't know how I even got there. You're just guided, folks. I tell you, just get involved. It is a steep learning curve. It is a lot of time. You have to stick with it. This is your life you're talking about. This is the lives of the people you love around you you're talking about. This is the lives of the nation of people that thought that they had a better way in the world. That can be looked at objectively to be shown there is a better way with what we were promised to America that needs to be protected, that we were not vigilant to protect, that we can get back to once we see it. That the law library I got focused on, I walked in and the first thing I'm looking at was an encyclopedia of admiralty law of all things. An encyclopedia of admiralty law. Don't miss the immensity of this problem now. Talk about a steep learning curve. Now, I did sit down. I went every day. Brought my lunch. Went every day. And don't ask me why, but I sat down and I was guided to read. And I only got through 3/4 of this encyclopedia. It was like an old Encyclopedia Britannica. It's many, many volumes. Many, many volumes. Kind of like what William Roberts would read to you every day. Is I sat down for about a week and a half or so, and I read that international volume. And you know what? For all you all that talk about Admiralty law, you all need to go read that book. That encyclopedia. It's called Benedict's on Admiralty. Because that's going to give you some really sharp insights on how internationally this thing works. You actually might find your penal statutes in one section of that code, as I did for the state I was in. Because I had read the penal statutes, the statutory code I had read before I got there. I prepared myself, apparently, guided by this this knowledge and this intrigue about, well, where did America go? What's happening? And this is in my first time when I'm actually in earnest fighting against the state on that time when 5 cops are going to kill me. That was all over a fabricated charge of criminal traffic charge. Fabricated. And this is where the whole thing started to come, that I had to go read the state statute. I sat down and read the volumes and volumes of state statutes to see what this thing was about. I didn't understand it then. I just kept reading them. Went to the international law, and I saw the penal statutes, and I recognized the penal statutes of the Admiralty Code inside the statutory code of the state, because I had read them. I didn't know them. I couldn't recite them to you, but I knew they were somewhere. I had another hunch, a knowledge hunt, an educated guess. I'd seen those things before as I was reading international documents. And sure enough, the penal statutes of the state are almost word for word the international statutes. Does that mean you're in Admiralty jurisdiction? Not necessarily. So that's what I started to learn about possibilities and probabilities. Keep them open as a possibility and a probability based on how much they work. So there's one aspect of me that I can talk to you completely within the context of Admiralty, that it's international law on the land. It's easy to get there really quickly. But are you all the time? That's going to be another debate, and we could have that discussion. And I would just resort to the fact of what's the plaintiff invokes the court, and the plaintiff invokes the jurisdiction, and you'd have to discuss that with the plaintiff. Is the state in Admiralty or is the state in commerce, corporation? You'd have to go look at the way the state brings their claim. So the point is that we have to have a bigger knowledge. And now I speak from that knowledge, and I know I go fast. I can't help it. I'm just not that guy. I'm not the guy that can methodically go down and just be nice, and I can tell as I get through my broadcast, I start speeding up and I get louder and louder, and just the way it works. It's just you get a momentum working. That said, I'm trying to get out as much of my knowledge as possible. I think it's valuable. I know we're using it as a point, and I think that what I've been using, the way I use it, it works to some extent to curb at least the momentum, the mass against us that we're seeing play out now. They're not making it. There's nothing hidden now. They're not transparent to us, actually. For as much transparency as they say they're talking, and as much transparency as they say that they're given, there's really none. It's right in our face. To the extent they don't want you to know their motive, that's transparent to you. To what their outcome is, they'll tell you, but they don't want you to really recognize what that is. And they've set up this structure. I tell you, the silent weapons and quiet wars. The way to keep monitoring you. See, the occupying force of the world has to monitor you. Why? Because the international laws, I've said this over and over, is that the occupying force, the main duty of that force is to not piss off the natives. Because it's known, it's a natural, it's as natural as law of natural as man is, that when man finally finds out that he's been duped, and he isn't down into the condition of inaction, the mass of people recognizing that will come after you as the usurper, because they realize you are the problem. And so the first rule of occupying forces is don't piss off the natives. If you don't piss off the natives, they don't come after you. And if they don't come after you, over time you get to change the world around them. And haven't I just described what the United States of America was? Haven't I just described really what all governments do, that the people don't have a handle on? And that's why we were told also, for as much as I can see a different proof, Franklin, another Inns of Court member, another attorney, says, we gave you. You weren't a part of it, just like you're not a part of this UN nonsense that the Pope's bringing down. We gave you. You weren't a part of it, but we gave you a republic if you can keep it. And knowing full well that if you weren't the authors of it, you couldn't know enough to defend yourself to keep it. What were you looking at to protect? And so the game was rigged from right there, but that didn't mean that we lost our power. That should have given us more clue. In fact, I'm using it now. Let's use that as the clue of how devious these people are that we have to rise above. And that's for us to do. No one else is going to rise up for you. I might care for someone that they're down, and I may want to assist them up. But no one with an ulterior motive is going to come and help me to tell me how to keep myself from being put down. Or come along and I'm going to declare that you're down and I'm going to put you somewhere, like we're doing with this new Transformation 2030. And I do hope you all read it. Now, if you're not, I don't know, folks. This is one of the things. I don't know how many people are actually going back and reading these things. They're setting up a global plantation. It's right there. I've been talking about this for years. It wasn't hyperbola. It was just the matter of fact that they're laying it out. They are showing you how they're going to make a war, if you will, come against poverty by making another class right above poverty called austerity. And how they're going to not allow you to decide to assist someone. They're going to come in and force you to contribute to a system that's not of your making. And you say, I'm not going to let anybody force me to do anything. And I'm going to tell you, you don't even know you've already been brought into that thing, and you've been forced to do all kinds of stuff. And that ignorant statement that's just made in that context, and the lack of awareness that you can't escape the things that are on you, whether that's implied, expressed, whether it's overt or covert against you, is your problem. Because these people know the protocols of the elders of Zion as that instruction manual on how to find your weaknesses and get you to do things you didn't even know you were going to do. But they do this by monitoring. The occupying forces monitor. This is why I tell you why it was so important about the quiet weapons, silent wars. You'll see that on every blogcaster page. I just left it. I keep bringing the link in, hoping people will read this. Again, it's an instruction. Yeah, there's parts of it that are dry. But the main points, I went back on a few previous bad broadcasts to inform you that this is data. They talk about data in it. I told you what they don't talk about is the big data. And the danger may be in the NSA and the government being able to make stuff up on all the stuff they get from you. The bigger problem is going to be the commercial corporate side, because that's the funding stream for all this nonsense. As you found out I tell you in the CAFRs, and again to remind you of Clint Richardson's work, Corporation Nation. It's an economic construct. It's about the bottom line. And you've been made part of that bottom line. Now they have a triple bottom line. Okay? This is what they keep talking about, and everyone misses the importance. That data acquisition is going to be important. Interfering with that is also going to be important. In other words, when I keep telling you, you don't think you don't have something to follow, that you don't have anything, you don't do anything wrong, you don't have nothing to worry about. Well, that's not true, because not only can they put together things that are not relevant, as we use the example of the mother wanting a pressure cooker for a new pressure cooker to replace her rice cooker. Her husband was looking for knapsacks to go hunting or something, and the son was just interested in the marathon bottoming. They get a knock on the door that they want to know why this family's a terrorist family. Those disparate pieces of information were put together by someone, and they decided what you were doing is the problem, that they make stuff up. Well, we have another evidence for those of us on Twitter. Twitter accused of eavesdropping on users. Now, okay, so you say, okay, that doesn't matter, but listen, here's what they did, which kind of got my attention. Twitter surreptitiously eavesdrops on users by intercepting, reading, and altering private messages without their knowledge, according to a federal class action seeking potentially massive damages against the popular social network. So I'm not going to read more than to tell you they said it right there. They're going to alter your private message. And this is that thing. They set it up that the record shows that you're a wrongdoer. We got a story coming up that Monsanto is actually going to get into data acquisition business. What happens if you start speaking against Monsanto and they're one of the people doing the data acquisition, like Google, everybody else, like all the other players? And they start learning a little bit about you because they got a little bit of, even in the metadata, they know exactly what's going on. That they decide that they know enough, they can get enough intelligence on you, they come after you as an opponent of theirs. They dig up the dirt, and they alter the dirt in order to make more dirt. Which I guess here at this point, in this concepting of what they do, they monitor, collect data, evaluate, and adapt this beast on us. You need to know this is the tools that they're using to do it. If you can't just say, that's expected. That's not the right answer. That's the wrong attitude. It's not that it's expected. It's that this is the tools they're using to take us all down. Does that mean I stop using Twitter? Well, I'd probably stop using Twitter before, because it's like Grimner says, it's like yelling at your TV. Well, I don't watch TV. Lots of stuff goes out, not much comes back. A little bit of static. So, from that standpoint alone, I don't do too many direct messages. And when I do, I keep them really, really short. There's not much to be altered there. Because I had this idea. But here's the proof. The system that you engage in, that's handed to you for free, is not so free when it comes down to what they're after. What they're after is information. Why they're after it is they're an occupying force in the world against your life. And here's the proof. If you didn't, you heard it from me before, but if you hadn't heard it from me before, there's some people taking action here. Well, there it is. That's another thing. You have a remedy against this. You just got to figure out how to get it thrown out there. It really doesn't matter what the outcome of that case is going to be. Now we have the proof that there's some evidence that these companies do this. And when you get into the Microsoft problem, when they're forcing Windows 10 on you to get this data, and their privacy policy is no privacy policy, and now you see they're going to alter your data because they got control of the digits, the black and whites, the little ones and zeros, that should cause another problem for you. When you find out what I talked to you last week is that you come pursuant and your rights come subject to a UN system where they make the decision on what you're doing, and they make the decision on whether or not they like what you're doing. And then they have access to all this data to make it so. That another story comes out quickly, and I'm going to just do the digitals. I'm going to get back to some of the stuff from last year, because this week is not over. This week is still going on with the very important notice we're being given, the very important gauntlet that's being slapped across our face. that people don't really recognize it as that. But on this digital theft and manipulation and of your data, those of you with Siri, S-I-R-I, I think they're on iPods or something, change this setting to stop Siri spilling your selfies. Now, I don't know where this idea, this narcissistic thing about selfies came up, but man, at any rate, this just shows the society, it shows where it wants to go. Watch out, iDevice owners. Siri has opened the pod bay door to let snoopers in. So here, I told you, we live in an open-air prison. When you go to prison, they have these sections called pods. And I realized very quickly that you're in your little room, called your cell, in a pod. We lived in an open-air prison. It just the only distinction between the outside world and the inside world was how well you were being compliant to the warden's demands. That if you're really compliant, you live in what they call a house. Not so much you live in a cell in a pod. So here we have our surveillance devices that keep track of us. Instead of it being on an ankle bracelet, we stick it in our pocket. It's called your iPod. But the pod bay doors have now let snoopers in. Barely a week after the release of iOS 9, a hacker has found a way to snoop access to your contacts, photos, and send messages without your passcode. So here we have, again, altering your information. In fact, it's now giving information out. They can actually put messages out that you aren't even doing. So I want to develop that one of the weapons against us is we do it to ourselves is these technologies we have no clue over. That we may have nothing to do, folks. You're not doing anything wrong, and someone sends a message through your phone, and all of a sudden they've made it look like you've done something wrong. Should be of a concern. And what you see is this: you see the control template being built. When they talk about you're going to contribute shared prosperity, and that's an imposition on you. Don't think they're not going to have the tools in order to make that so. For all of you tough, big and bad tough guys that think that your Second Amendment right's going to help you. This isn't going to be coming as an open war. They're after each one of us. And they'll have the goods on us, whether we made the goods or whether they make the goods on us. We're giving them the ability to do everything to us with this technology. That's why some people think it's all in technocracy. I say that's just one part of the data collection side. That is a part of the bigger scene. One thing that's going on here another scene that's going on. There was a story came out. Remember with this Syria thing? I want to kick Syria, S-I-R-I. Now we're going to Syria. If I can do some long segue here, but there we are. Obama to meet with Putin about Syria came from the White House as a Putin request. This whole thing is developing a life of its own. I would have thought that they would have wanted to do it, but the big spin here is that the United States government is saying that Putin asked. In fact, Putin didn't ask. They were going to have to meet, but it wasn't based on Putin like saying, we need to talk because you're going to hurt me. This is another gameplay as Putin is making more presence over there in Syria in earnest, and the United States is now having to find itself a position for something it started on a group of people that never did anything to it. And again, Russia having strategic and other interests in Syria are going to protect that interest. It's their one thing is another warm water port that they can stage themselves out of to protect what they've got. And not sure how they're going to do this. I'm not sure. I am sure. I have the feeling, and I could be wrong. Who knows? But I'm sure they learned their lesson of Afghanistan and Chechnya. They won't get embroiled like everyone thinks they're doing. It may very well be simply that they draw a big line in Syria and say, we're going to protect all of this part, and then that'll free up Assad's forces to jump over and go after ISIS on the ground, so that Russia only has to protect. They sit in a protective position against ISIS and to protect their ally Syria in a non-aggressive form that allows Syria to take all of its army and then focus it on the ground and start to cleanly sweep out what the United States Zio West has allowed in. That's just conjecture. but Russia's coming in. The United States is trying to spin it like Putin is saying, like he's afraid of something here, and he's got to have to ask the United States permission. In fact, the story's coming out that Russia's kind of laughing at this. They're laughing at this. The world is probably laughing at us as the United States of America, allowing these buffoons to be doing what they're doing. Buffoons to the extent that they are causing the turmoil. They're actually advancing the agenda that's on us right now, that the Pope is promoting, this Agenda 2030, causing refugees. Folks, I hope you appreciated hearing. If you didn't go and read it after the broadcast, if you're listening, I hope you appreciate when it says that refugees and emigres, essentially, are used by this sustainable world, in the sustainable developed world, as the pawns for the future sustainable development and sustained debt. And you don't see what's happening playing out of what the United States did that even wouldn't be relevant to taking Syria over as a political nemesis and a new positioning. You're missing another facet to this. This is promoting the global governance. Well, I tell you, be careful on who you think the players are and aren't. Putin's involved with that global governance. They just want to make sure that whatever part that's being affected doesn't affect them geopolitically in their needs in the future. They're maybe completely okay with the refugees, despite everyone saying it's no good. They may be completely okay with having the refugees if it allows this mechanism of global servitude to go through into underdeveloped places to make them so-called developing, which is really the imposition of refugees moving to a place they're not going to be bombed, to put them into subsistence level living, putting them into pods, causing them to pay taxes and high rents, to pay back into the system, to reinvigorate another developing area less than they are, that everybody in the world gets their bowl of rice and a bed to lay on and a little bit of space to wash their face, a communal kitchen, and everybody has their carbon footprint monitored so that they don't hurt the ground underneath their feet that they tread on, to go become that next human resource of the system, our human resource, as the Vatican stated. Again, a lot of this, I've been looking more and more to find the words coming from these people that have exalted themselves into a position of being able to state that they know better the world than you do, which they might. I'm talking about the diabolicalness of it because they're using that, but that they know nature better than you and that you are an affront to it, and they're the only ones that can control this. Should have insulted you a long time ago. That should have got us up and going to begin with, and it hasn't, which is a scary thing. I think I'm more scared about the crickets in people than I am when you get someone, you tell them what to do, and I mean, you don't have to tell them what to do after you threaten them. They'll respond. But this is coming so subtly. It's working underneath the skin. It's transparent to you, the transformation of the world. They tell you exactly. It's not my words. I don't want you. Some of this stuff is not my concept at all. I wouldn't be that smart. And I understand that doesn't mean that I wasn't intelligent enough to start to see it on my own. And you can too. And then you can do better. You can jump on my back for a little while, until I get you to the trailhead that you need to go down, and I expect you to jump off and go do your research. Kind of like the Chinese horoscope, the ox trudging along, the ox walking with the rat. The rat was smart enough to get on the ox's back because the ox was the one that was going to make it. He had the ability to keep walking and never stop, be persistent. But the rat was sharp enough to know that if he got right up to when the ox was going to go through the door, he could leap off the ox's head and go through the doorway first to be the first animal in the zodiac. That was the intelligence of the rat, why it's even in the beginning of the list. Are you going to be that intelligent? Are you going to ride my back till I get you to a trailhead that I want you to jump into and go do your work? Find what you find what I've found and different and more. I'm hoping so. I'd come every week that somebody will do that. Anybody new will step up and do that. Kind of a blind faith. Can I say that's my religion? I suppose. Again, it's all how we want to discuss it, and display it. And I don't think if I hadn't seen the ways I've seen the world, just be a shock to my innocence, if you will, I probably wouldn't have been here today. But it happened, so I'm here today. And made the decisions I've made, and I'm still here today. And I live in my own self-contained pod, if you will, behind a woodshed. The realization that we're in an open-air prison has struck me in a certain way. I don't really expect and demand too much, and then I don't require too much, and then that which I need has been benefited to me to be able to focus my attention on trying to get the word out, that I don't need so much. It's a bit of a sacrifice, but at some point it's a reality. If I live in a pod anyway, if I strike out against the man, which is not, it's a beast. It's not even a beast, it's just this illusion of authority, who other men and women take on as an authority to put you in a cage, a smaller one, then I'll be content in a pod that I live in every day, that may not be much bigger than the cell they want to put me in. If that self-imposed austerity focuses my attention to go against what they've been allowing to themselves. Understanding that I can't do it as an inmate by myself. I can just be the stick in their eye every time they come around to look in the window. But I can do more. And at some point there's going to be a riot, and I hope that I'm part of the instigation of that. But that the riot is not chaos. It's not anarchy. It comes with a sense of government. It comes with a sense of authority and hierarchy of laws and why they were important. It comes with a sense of property. It comes with a sense once you get the property, there's someone coming to steal yours. And there's people working in the world that are in places of power in order to advance this agenda, whether you see it, whether I see it, or whether we don't. What I see, I see. What I don't, I can't know. I can maybe guess, but I can't see what I can't see. But as long as things are going, as long as we're all talking about doomsday and the blood moon becomes more than the awesome natural response and becomes something that we tie to control people, I can see the evidence of a severe problem against us. That we also got in the news to say all the same week. Interesting how this works out. Again, complete coincidence. It's all happening now. I believe in coincidences. In fact, like I've told you, you're hearing my voice is a coincidence. The question is then, is there a meaning to the coincidence? Do you place a meaning on the coincidence that has merit substantially in a reality? And I hope you come and listen, and I know you must do this, that you find value. Hopefully you're turning that back out, you're helping other people, or you're actually working with this to learn the substance of the knowledge that I'm trying to give you. As I said, knowledge is not power, it's application. Proper application. It's like all the difference in the world. That I hope there's a value to this you come to do, that we get beyond to see we have something to do here. And there's a couple of points I may bring to the matter that will let you know that's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's not this idea, this notion. That we see these things happening at the time. It's all the same time. It all happened at a reason. A lot of this is beyond happenstance, I guess, is the problem for me with coincidence. That we also see right after the Pope shows up. Remember, they said this is historic. This guy never has showed up. This office, this being that comes in, has never been here before. And then when he comes, he doesn't just come to visit the Grand Canyon. No, he enters into a political body. And yes, I mean that on a couple of levels, if those of you that picked that up. He enters into a political body. He does his magic there. He even gets, you see how crazy these people are. Someone sees him drink from a glass of water, one of these Congress critters. and steals. He didn't steal it, I guess he abandoned the cup. So the guy went and grabbed the cup that the Pope drank from to be able to drink from the water, and gave it to his wife and his aides and this and that and the other. This is the level of insanity we start to see. I understand the context. But this Pope comes into this political body, possesses this political body for a time, does his magic, leaves, and then Boehner announces his resignation from the Speaker's office, claiming he wants to do right by the institution. Understanding we have some political pressure he's on. I'm sure that political pressure is not one of his problems. He's seen that to be the Speaker all this time. That right after the job is accomplished, mission accomplished for Boehner, he goes ahead and accelerates the time he was speaking about. He's going to think about resigning anymore. And I understand he's a Catholic. To let you know, this coincidence was not just a happenstance idea. There's a methodological steps that are being taken right now. The coincidence of which is, I leave that for your determination, and I hope you put some value in making that determination to see whether or not it's that important to focus on. Why I want you to focus, I think this is important. That he resigned is unimportant. That it points to a methodological attack against you is important. It's a sign of the times. Signs and wonders. I mean, we're kind of given a clue. Even the most clueless is given a clue. If you'll just read it's there. It's there to see. That this Pope comes in, and he talks to these Congress critters, who themselves had to have a special system set up so that they would protect the Pope from not being touched. He didn't want to be touched by the unclean political parasites that he's addressing. They were not worthy enough to his high-level vicar of all parasites, underneath the cover and illusion of protecting and charity. If he's so in peace, if they're so peaceful, why are they advocating violence? If they're so peaceful and want charity, why are they imposing it as a moral and mortgage of obligation on society on you? Why has this big guy been told to be the moral authority who we can find has no moral capacity in him? I'm not talking about the Catholic faith of those people that believe that even if you look, that faith has been thrown on its head. Even beyond where it's mistake in the beginning. Even beyond. That his speech to the Congress may have been the first, but it wasn't certainly the first speech. That I found just a discussion from Pope John Paul II that was done in 1979. That I went back and looked just to see the correlation. And I started reading it again now with my new eyes. See, 79, I wasn't even involved with this. And I haven't read that thing back since now. But they make some very interesting, plant some very interesting seeds back in 1979. Understand, this is way before the Rio Accord. That is being setting on the stage. I wouldn't have known it before, but I can see it now. It sets the stage for this very condition today. In fact, common good is only mentioned twice back then, at the very last bit, where now they're professing common good, but the term common good is nowhere in the transformation of the world A2030 that he's promoting today. That you really need to do word studies about what words are used from then to now and then now, and what those actually mean. That I found a discussion with Pope John Paul very, very interesting. I found what the Pope today, the so-called Holy Father, yeah, he's full of holes, all right. He's like Swiss cheese to the truth, folks. This is the grand deceiver. I don't know what biblical character he's actually playing. Would dare to say anything. But I don't need it to go that level to see this guy is promoting a very heinous thing upon people. That this Pope went to the United Nations as well as to Congress to make some statements. And again, I was thinking about it. I don't have the time in this broadcast, in 2 hours, to go through all that I see that I'd like to talk to you about. And so I'm really torn. I'd like to talk to you about it, but I want you to see stuff. I want you to go read it. I want you to be invested in this. As I'm just now, I think something just tricked in my mind. I tripped in my mind to say, that's another problem. I could sit down here and read paragraph after paragraph, which you've heard me do, and try to interject explanations of how I see this thing working out. All the important points I want you to know. And if you're taking notes, that's more power to you, because then you're accelerating. Everyone not sitting back and not taking notes, not making it important, not investing it, means nothing. I think I'm wasting everybody's time at that point that does that, between me and those that don't really take this on. I don't mean to waste anybody's time here. I don't need to listen to myself. I don't need to listen to myself again when I post-produce the broadcast to listen for all the mistakes I may or may not have made. In fact, I hear myself, and if I turn on to go to RLM and I listen to what's broadcasting, I hear my voice, I turn it back off. I don't need I've already heard it. Once in my head, once when I told you, once in critiquing the broadcast and making sure the broadcast file was good, and then again. And to all y'all that listen to my voice again to try and get more, I appreciate that. I do understand. I do come pretty quick, and I do have a lot that's built into what I say that I do know it takes some multiple times, but God bless you for having to listen to my voice all that time. I wish it came quicker. And I guess to circumvent that is all you need to do is read these documents I tell you to read. Go to these places and get these words. Start making it important. Invest in this. So then you have something that you're protecting. Don't let it just be an idea. But so this Pope came up, and he uses a lot of phraseology in talking, and it really sounds pleasant, I guess, in the surface. But you listen carefully to you read carefully what he's talking about. With this Pope this time, not 79, but now. They said some more important things in 79 about the bond between the Pope, the Vatican, the Holy See, actually, and the UN. Bond, folks. Bond. Consider this. Both a word of finance or economics and servitude. And I can guarantee you that the UN, being the tool, is not in the upper position here. And if you listen very carefully, this Pope talks about the UN being a tool to bring along something universal. And you'll look at that. Go look up that word in the text, in universal. Look in the context that they use the word universal. They talk to a universal community. They're talking about the one they're going to impose upon you. Now, I am probably not talking to anybody who agrees with that worldview, as they'll tell you. I'm only talking to those that thought that they had an independent, self-reliant, self-executing, self-operative thought in their brain that could actually work in the world. I'm talking to you because that is under attack, where these people talk about universal communities, shared prosperity, that it's under the obligation of contribution. If you didn't know about tithing, and this economic sustained debt is tithing, you're going to be working for the church, and it's going to be your solemn duty, and you'll feel that. If you don't think that behavior is being programmed into you right now, you're missing a very big deal, because that's what this is all about, is behavioral modification. The symbols of independence of which are being destroyed everywhere. The obfuscation of individuality is being destroyed everywhere, as I talked about the weaponization of social justice. One of the pillars, I call it the stool, dropping out of the tail end of the beast that they want you to be, as you are devoured by the system. Now, I was going to read, I got all this stuff here I want to read, and I'm just thinking now I don't want to really read it. Maybe some of you may be disappointed. Probably a lot of you you don't like to hear me read because maybe I don't read so well, maybe you're elated. But the point is that I can discuss this till I was blue in the face. And if you nod your head and you just say, yeah, I agree with you, or yeah, you're right, it's right there, and you do nothing more, this comes on the world. This may come on the world anyway. But there has to be a witness counter to it. And I don't just mean in words. It has to be in the spirit as well. You have to be able to counter this, not just in logic. Not just embody, indeed, but in spirit. Mind, body, and spirit. Talk about three pillars of your existence. This is what's under attack, if I can put it in that context, and I hope you know I can. I hope you accept it in that part too. It can be looked at in all these ways. That this is the massive attack that's on us, against us. That's coming really under the radar, or for those that we all think we know so much, oh, well, I'm addressing it because I'm going to resist. I'm just not going to do something. I'm just going to resist. You don't understand. This is beyond you because it's generational. When you talk about future generations, they're talking beyond your contribution, folks. They're going to be here until they vanquish the world with this this idiocity is what it is. Ideology. It's just an idiocy in the world. And I guess I'm going to apologize here. I was going to read some stuff out of this speech that he just spoke, this Pope. But I don't know that I want to. I want you to go download it. I want you to read for this stuff. If you don't have the word power in your vocabulary, just learn to start looking for things that just don't make sense and go read those. Why do they mention in this thing that they're talking about financial agencies capitalized, F-A capitalized? Why? Why is that so important to a spiritual leader, man? As I said, leader. A leader is just something you tie the bait to, the hook. Why are they talking about financial agencies in this document? And when you go over to Agenda 2030, as I read, you heard me read it. Debt, sustainable debt. And how many times did I say the word debt in that one paragraph, goal 17? This is a world of servitude they're bringing on. That's probably about as clear as I can tell you this is. However it gets done, whatever words we want to put on it, this is what's coming. And a qualified one handed that as a moral authority to this guy that's parading around the United States government and the country and into the UN in order to advance this thing that absolutely contrary to the basic tenets of the real faith, and certainly contrary to anything he calls as a Christian faith. It's an insult. That more people aren't calling this out, I'm really kind of stunned. At the spirit, at the church level, I guess I should say, because it's not the Spirit. The Spirit speaks and works differently. That works in an instant. Another knowing as well when you start tuning into that part. You need to look at these statements that this guy made. You need to really think about it. Yes, I know it's drier than heck, and yes, it may not even make a whole lot of sense at some point. But when you find out this is the game plan, this is actually the mundane discussion on how they're taking you out. How they use things you think is good and they're applying them bad because we didn't realize they're really neutral. You really have to rethink what you think about, how you think about it. Do you think I really care about the Pope to talk about him? If he was discussing a faith inside a group of people, for the leader of a group of people, equal to Jim Jones, do you think I'd care more than, oh man, I wish those people hadn't listened to their detriment? No, I really could care less. But this is a player on the world stage, not just a little group that goes to a mountain waiting for some aliens. And these people mean business, and I mean that. It's strictly business. It's the business of religion. It's the business of control. It's the business of destruction of those that they deem heretics. Not you. You don't have a say here. If you get that in all they're talking about here. Peace and reconciliation. Remember, it's peaceful to the usurper when you shut up and listen and do as you're told. I said that. I just looked up on the page I was going to read from, and I'm telling you, every word has a meaning. Peace and reconciliation was three words in a term. Do you know what it means? It sounds warm and fuzzy. No, it means that you have ceased to be able to struggle against the oppression they're bringing. And they reconcile with you that you can't, when you stop struggling, that they'll allow you to live as long as you only ask for what you gave, if you can keep it. I mean, did I just transcend a couple centuries right there for you, I hope? Because this is how universal, this is how long-term this imposition is, that is what I'm talking about. That's my problem with all of this. This is not what we were supposed to be doing, at least in America. And I'll tell you what, across the world, as I can apply, every man and woman ought to have the same thing. Does that mean that we're fixed as people? No, and that's why I bring Cain versus Abel. We got a problem. But when you see people that come out and the sugar, the honey lips, the honey tongue coming from an adder, you better watch out, folks. Because I'm going to move on now. It comes out as well. Pope Francis applies the golden rule to refugee crisis. Do unto others as you'd have them do to you. You know, folks, for someone who's an international demon, they don't care about what you can do to them. Have you thought about it that way? These terms are neutral. It's hard for people of innocence and integrity to consider these things. It really has been hard for me. Maybe a proof. I'm not perfect, but at least I'm a little bit more innocent and a little bit more just in my approach in the world than these people that are evil genius and psychopaths, sociopaths, literal demon, concentrated evil in the world. But they don't have the same imposition of the words that they put on your psyche that you have. But they can be using them just the opposite. They say that do unto others as you'd have done unto them. They don't care. You'd have to be able to have the ramifications come on you to worry about that. What if you don't have that? They don't care about this golden rule. That's for you. That's for you to comport yourself to. That's for you to believe that that's what's going on. Because in their A-21 that this guy is talking about, the golden rule is the gold that rules over the causing of the refugee crisis. We read it right in A-2030. The origin and the destination of the refugees is used to the benefit of both states. To do what? To make further sustainable debt and development in other places. That they do what? They use those financial institutions that he talks about. The financial agencies, actually, as I went back to read for sure, because I said, oh, no, that wasn't the word. Let's go back. The term they used was agency. That brings up to the idea for me real quick is between the Catholic in making an agency of the Jewish people who don't have usury as a restriction, and the church who does not believe in usury, like the Muslims. If you want to start seeing consistencies, they have a problem with it. They're not supposed to use it, though they say they use it as an agency the Jewish people that supposed Jewish faith to impart usury on the rest of the world that they were controlling. Now, not the Jews, the Catholic Church. That the golden rule, everyone, oh yeah, great, the Pope's a great guy. He's going to put the golden rule on how this refugee thing is. You know, he's not speaking about the atrocity of what caused this whole thing. He's not asking that to stop. He's just saying, treat these refugees as if you wanted to be treated yourself. Well, what is he speaking to? He's speaking to nations. These are fictions without feeling. fictions without actual care, that their bottom line is a triple bottom line. And you see that in A-21. They lead these honey-dripped, tongued adders that speak at us. Poverty, nuclear weapons in the environment, Pope Francis at the UN as we're talking. They tie all this together. You think this guy is talking about decent things. It says a pontiff called for a ban on nuclear weapons and chastised international finance and, quote, ideological colonization for the making the world worse. And yet he tags on to Agenda 2030, which is just a 15-year interim in the Agenda 21 for the 21st century is 2100. How far-reaching this is going to be. The implementation program of action for the UN system of governance control. He chastises as an ideological colonization the very thing he agrees to as an ideological colonization. In other words, his is better than theirs. Now, I'm paused there again. I'm wanting you to think about this when I pause. You have to look at this that way. If you never did, then start. If you thought you did and it was a little different, then tell me behind mark@yahoo.com, mark@yahoo.com, what your interpretation of that was. Because I don't get too much feedback. I think sometimes I think I'm a madman. And I also know that there's a need for that in the world. But, I mean, actually kind of lunatic. Oh, the supermoon lunatic. I don't think so. But I sense that. You kind of want to have a sense of your place within everybody else, because we're not separate, actually. Well, they say no man is an island kind of thing. But we do like to be able to work in our own sphere and be able to produce and be creative or not within our own determination. We would like to be free to make our own mistakes, and then between us, we hope we don't extend those, and we hope everybody doesn't extend their mistakes to others. That this statement, ideological colonization, the whole world is a colonization. In fact, they treat people, humans, as this colonization of evil on Gaia. But to have this guy in a church who wants universal church, it'll be the green religion will be over all other religions, and if you can't, you got to understand how they're going to do that. That it's very easy. Well, your spiritual beliefs are going to be subservient to your the mortgage, social mortgage you have on your life in protection of the environment. All other faiths fall underneath that, and why not? Because he ties God and the creation to your obligation, completely contorting what all that's about. In fact, worshiping the creation instead of the wonder and the creator of it all. Given that you want to say that, and those of you that don't, okay, make it up. It's just another fiction that we all seem to make anyway. You have your own religion. If not, let's come up with the objective basis on how we all got here. And then I want you to speak to the nothingness that must have come from. But in fact, folks, I'm getting to the point, I don't need those philosophical discussions. I have an active oppressor on me now that I need to throw off. All of us do. It's in the world. And that's enough work for me. That I've kind of gotten away from philosophical discussions and really things that I kind of apply the rule of evidence. Is it material, pertinent, or relevant to the discussion, the problem at hand? And if it's not, I push it away. Yeah, I'll listen. We talk. There's nothing all constrained. We can have discussion. We can have a time when we kind of relax and have an entertainment. But for the most part, that's the moments we are able to do that, and we can kind of free ourselves up, are the moments that the enemy is not failing to act. And so again, we hear a denial, a condemnation of one is not necessarily the condemnation entirely. This guy chastises international finance. And why was he talking about financial agency in the other document? because that's the tool of the plunder on the world to be in debt, obligation debt. And with your mortgage of social justice obligations to contribute, you are hearing another ideological colonization going on. I hope you, again, put this stuff together. It's right here for us, right for us to know. This is not secret anymore. This is not silent. It's just in a language that we may or may not be able to understand because it's, well, it's that way. You know, the church was known to do Latin for a long time. You know, we can go through the discussion, but it's irrelevant. They just did it. And then all of a sudden they had to figure out a way to soften that up, so they stopped speaking Latin. Well, this is the thing about an abuser. They just adjust things so you keep being acceptable of the abuse. I mean, it's getting so bad now. This guy is stopping. He's not speaking in any fundamental Catholic things. He's now expanding that. He's breaking down those borders, and for the most part, most of the faithful are not speaking out against that. But that we'll see as that wound festers. We'll see. For our problem is that jurisdiction has come out into the world. It is the thing that is of the world and what is working in the world. That I bring it only to identify it, not to discuss it. The identity, this is the enemy to a certain way of life that I have that has intruded and gotten a foothold and beyond. I mean, it really does have a control in a place it was never supposed to be. In fact, the embrace of the United States government with sustainable development is a violation of the separation of powers. There's not supposed to be that integration. In fact, money's never supposed to go to the spending of money for religion. In fact, that was part of our lawsuit, that the coffers of the Treasury were being spent on sustainable development and things like that. The method to impose it, that became an unconstitutional appropriation of funds. And so we stated that. Is there more to state? Well, probably, but we didn't decide. We decided to go there. And I bring these concepts. I mean, this is just an idea. That's what you look at when you're looking at a problem. You look at where the fundamental line was drawn and how the people that are coming against you have crossed that line. And then I've advanced to you something I don't know if anybody talks about this. I've never heard anybody talk about the remedy that says that when someone has an officialness that comes about them, that they come to act through to deny you your property and your rights and remedies and things like that, or they hand those to a third party, that's a felony. And there's no immunity to that. That for me, that little nugget there, that little thing that I just described, is first and foremost anymore in my mind, to be a pretty quick response. And the only other thing is the institution that was made to enforce that, is it worthy? And you'll find out more than likely it's not at this point, and you'll have to educate about that. But it is something that is supposed to be worthy because it's a duty and obligation. That I think if we approach these problems this way, have you heard me talk about the Second Amendment yet? No, you don't hear me talk about that, because we have the right to alter or abolish the government as we see, or we have the ability to hold those that have made the commitment that were swearing where they shall swear not. They're swearing to do something and failed. That if you want to maintain law, because it allows objective basis to function, and we get away from this thing that's on us right now, the policies, these very ideas that are not ever tested, the lack of property. If you want law, then you're going to have to fight for it. And you're going to have to assert it. And when you find those that won't assert it, you're going to find the reality that you live in. No different than we asserted a show cause against the Secretary of the Interior for crimes. And the government came against us with the FBI and their law enforcement. That told us a whole lot. Is it going to stop us? Well, actually not. It just gave us more crime to go after, didn't it? But very much so, the awareness that we are dealing with a very dangerous beast. Whether we want to face up to that or not, whether we think we want to know, we understand it or not, it's there. It's working in the world. It has its origins in a couple of different, in one space, but actually it kind of spreads out, so you see it coming at you from different places. And it's going to take those of us that see that, more than sitting behind a keyboard, more than listening to my broadcast, to learn, take the obligation to, maybe if you would, go ahead and crawl, stay as the intelligent creature the rat is, and this is in the Chinese horoscope. You ride on the ox that's gone before and has the stamina to get you to a spot, and in your moment you jump forward to take on the responsibility of being the first. That's what I want you to do, whether it's on my broadcast or you find some other people that can do it for you. Go ahead. I mean, I don't know who I wrote in on myself. Actually, I took a different tact. I said, I can't go on a lot of the oxen I see traveling on the road. I think they're all mucked and mired out. They're sitting in the rice paddies going nowhere. But I'm sure maybe people like Lysander Spooner, whom I would never be able to talk with, gave me insights that I would have never had without what his writings were about. And actually what he did in the world in face of the beast that he knew was there too. Pretty interesting. Did I do everything he did? No, but it's certainly, his insights certainly are with me, and I could find his insights in other places to prove those out. People like that in the world I've used, maybe as my oxen, and then I decided I was going to go grab for my ring, if you will. I was going to get through the door first, and I jumped from the back of that support, that foundation, and I ran down my trails. I found what I found. I saw what I saw. And I'm here today to try and tell you the same thing. I'm here today to talk to you about it. If not that I can talk with tons of people and all kinds of stuff. I'm not here for that. I can guide you to where you need to go and how you need to do it. I can actually help you on terminology and things, but I really can't take up your cause. That would be asking me to take up all the causes, and I can't, first of all. There's no way, and I don't know that I'd want to. I want to empower people. They stand up. I mean, as much, whatever I'm standing up, however bent over I am, I'm not bent over as much as I used to be. However bowed over I might be under this oppression, I'm certainly stronger now. In fact, someone was talking about, this game of life. There was an image I noticed on Twitter. Everybody was in the image was bent over, and there was a game board, like a Monopoly game board, that all the people were standing. They're all bent over at the waist. The game board was on their back, and the graphic representation of the banksters were all around the game board playing the game. And it said just simply, the people just need to stand up, and the game goes away. Very nice, clear statement, cartoon, such that it was. And that's what we need to do. We need to stand up. Stand upright, we're told. You can't do that underneath these guys talking like this, agreeing to not act or to be defiant against what they say without stepping up and actually engaging it. There was a comment like I've heard, what would we do? I mean, what should we do when the Pope showed up here? I told you, if I had the opportunity and the chance and the ability, when he started promoting sustainable development, Agenda 21, the concepts that he's talking about here in the United States, I would have arrested him for a felony. I'm not, and it's easy to say that, but I'm telling you, I'm getting to the point where we're looking at the agents of destruction, and we're looking right in their face and saying, you're the felon. And you know what happens when you do that? They don't like it, because they know they are. So I'm getting to a better point. We all go through the transitions. I'm getting to the better point of moving along in what we were supposed to know to do. We were talking the stereotypical, be a man. I think I'm still learning all that. But I think I'm a lot closer. That doesn't distract from being a woman. A woman has her space and her place as well. Some are similar and the same as men, but there is a different thing going on between the two. And some of that's obvious, some of that's physically obvious. Some of that is in the function of the conditions that we live between the two. But we both have to step up to protect ourselves, whether that's the man out before the danger comes onto the property, or the woman in defense, like the mama bear syndrome, where you just don't mess with the mama bear. You just don't do it. But that defense is the final act defense, and you'd rather not see that at all. That's just a way I've seen the world. Whether or not you may be offended by that or not, I don't know what to say. That's the way I've seen the world respond. I can tell you that when you get a woman back down into where she has to defend the family, there was no man there to do it. If the man gets taken down, she will, but she's the last resort at that point. If this Pope wants to believe family is important, like he says, that's what his policies are destroying. Requiring the woman to stand up to defend the family because the man was either not there or taken out of the picture, taken down. He doesn't talk out about that. No, he'll embrace the rights of child. That's an abomination on people. That's an attack on family. He'll embrace human rights. As I've told you, go read it, folks. Look for it. Find the place that it says your rights are to the extent and subject to the need of the state. Pope challenges joint Congress to work for the common good. Communist good, or worse, the ideological empire that's being created in this nonsense. And you'll have the Congress critters, rah, folks. So go look at the political parties. Both parties enforce the environment, just like this Pope is bringing as a condition of your existence, the more social mortgage on your life. There is no distinction. They were also parties to our lawsuit to enjoin this method that they do. The common good. Go look for the term now, folks. I looked. It's not in the statements much. It's only lip service he's talking. And then what common? Common to what? He's talking universal here. He's talking universal here. Do you understand what universal means? At the point of a force, and it's really a violence in the world under the banner of peace, to ensure that you contribute your share to the prosperity of all under and to the state. Whatever fiction that is in your mind. And this is an international state, a bureaucracy, a governance. There's no discussion, even to a democratic concept here. That all is destroyed by your acceptance. And what they're coming up with, what they're moving toward is toward the end of this year is a Paris meeting where they're going to attempt to make a treaty. And so we see also in the news that these people respond, these Congress critters respond to the pressure of the people. I would ask you, even though it sounds like it's not very viable, respond to those people that say that they're your representatives and send out the voice that you do not want a treaty that condemns the American way of life to, well, whatever fascism, a religious ideological empire. You can call it out just like he's counter what he says with his own words. The common good, folks, is being talked about. It's not even defined. It's not even spoken of in a few of the conversations that I've seen the Pope talk about, unless he's promoting. It's nothing there's nothing in A-2030. And it was only referenced twice by Pope John Paul in 1979. As almost an afterthought. It came in the last paragraph twice. It's trying to elicit that you have an obligation, that what you're doing is not good enough. It imposes an obligation that actually doesn't exist. And no one calls that out. In other words, the other thought, when you hear that, who are you to even make that? Who are you? What you call yourself is irrelevant to me, first of all. Secondly, I believe, for myself, this is not your words, this is my words, I believe the gentleman's a fraud. And that's being nice. He might be able to get a lot of people to agree with him, but I don't agree with him. That doesn't allow for a common, folks. It doesn't allow for for multiculturalism in their definition, which is no more culture than they'll allow you. They cannot actually tolerate my diversity. And I say that but that's all of y'all that would believe similar. You don't have to believe the same. What our being free is doesn't have to be the same. What we believe is our private right to our exclusive use and enjoyment of what we call our own selves and property can be what we want it to be. We shouldn't trespass others with it, and we should, and I believe we need law for those for the objective basis, so it's all known, because there are these people that would expand on this, as we see this guy doing, and these nations, supposedly states, doing this. They expand on what they thought they had license to do, and they trespass under color. As I've told you, that's a felony. Expanding a jurisdiction under the deception of warm and fuzzy things is a felony. And again, you had the duty to know the law. You are charged with not being ignorant, which means you're charged to understand when a sweet talker comes, when a honey-drenched adder's tongue comes at you. You are duty bound to protect yourself. That's not a rule I made up. It's just the way it works. I'm trying to now look. There was something that came up here. Maybe I have it. Oh, that's right. I have it out of turn. Now I found it. These terms are what is very important, and these terms that become unknowing to us at some level. The author of the documents, the author of the term, defines it. And if you get nothing in response when you ask for the definition of more nebulous words, then you ought to know you're dealing with another one of these deceivers. One of the terms that this guy, the Pope Francis, used was reciprocal subsidiarity. Reciprocal subsidiarity is what better pronounced, as I get it all choked out. Reciprocal subsidiarity. What the heck is that? But this is what they talk about. And so I went and I found this term. I go, what the heck is that? What's he really talking about? Because he also talks about solidarity right after that in the speech. What's this subsidiary? To me, that was subsistence. That was subsidy. And it's reciprocal. But I also know in international side, there's nothing reciprocal when you're in an occupied state or facing violence in response to your failure to contribute. Then I found an interesting little report. Someone else was asking about that. Happens to be a Mennonite who has permanent residence, legal permanent residence, at a Catholic institution, who's been there for 13 years, who had the same question. What is reciprocal subsidiarity? Well, I first thought, what, a Mennonite at a Catholic institution? Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize that Mennonites would be interested that way, because I thought there was a real problem between them. So I went and looked real quick on the Wikipedia, just to get an idea. I'm not going to get in too deep. I just want to find out where's this guy coming from. A Mennonite as a legal permanent resident, researching the Catholic religion, coming up with the same phrase statement that I'm having a question with. Mennonites are Christian groups belonging to the church communities of Anabaptist denominations named after Menno Simons of Friesland, at the time a part of the Holy Roman Empire. Through his writing, Simons articulated and formalized the teachings of early Swiss founders. The early teachings of the Mennonites were founded on the belief in both the mission and ministry of Jesus, which the original Anabaptist followers held to be a great conviction despite persecution by the various Roman Catholic and Protestant states. Remember, the Protestants are going to be signing a peace treaty to end the war between the Catholicism and the Protestants of Luther's fabrication or creation, however you want to look at it, in 2017 of this month that year. And the Anabaptists were contrary to both of those. That's where it triggered my mind. Why? As I said, a Mennonite in legal permanent residence at a Catholic institution who finds reciprocal subsidiarity a question, and he blames it on the fact he's just not been there long enough to understand. Building a nation calls us to recognize that we must constantly relate to others, rejecting a mindset of hostility in order to adopt one of the reciprocal subsidiarity in a constant effort to do our best. I am confident that we can do this, is what the Pope said, and he goes on to say, the word subsidiarity is an odd one to the non-Catholic. I've sort of considered it a rough synonym for federalism in a political sense. In a political sense. In essence, let those closest to a social issue address it as they know it best. The Pontifical Council of Justice and Peace in 2006 published a compendium of the social doctrine of the Church, which says the following with respect to national and local governance. National and local governance, not government. Subsidiarity, understood in the positive sense, as economic, institutional, or juridical assistance offered to lesser social entities, entails a corresponding series of negative implications that require the state to refrain from anything that would be de facto restrict the existential space of the smaller essential cells of society. Their initiative, freedom, and responsibility must not be supplanted. By using the term reciprocal subsidiarity, the Pope seems to be calling on individual citizens to reach out and interact with immigrants and refugees on a personal level. I'm going to end right there. You can read this a little bit more. It takes a little bit of thought. But did you understand how this is applied to state, but reciprocal then applies to the individual in the state? And what did he say about it? What does A20 say? But you have a contribution you will be making for prosperity under state control. That is what he's talking. The subsidy is what you contribute to the state. Why is that in a statement of peace? Why is that in a statement of free, being a statement to be more free in the world? Isn't that more consistent with sustainable debt, or global sustainable slavery? Your subsidy to support the state is what this Pope talks to. That was even a question by this Mennonite having legal permanent residence with a Catholic institution, 13 years. The term subsidiarity actually has one of its roots in the Roman Catholic Church. It's like as if it's their origination. It's not much different than when you find out about Corporation Soul. Very interesting, these things that you see issuing out of the court as it dealt with the world. The term subsidiarity is a principle of social doctrine. Now, social doctrine is what he was talking about when he talked to the term social doctrine. He's talking about the subsidiarity, the reciprocal subsidiarity. Not where the state watches out for everybody and everybody gives their space. No, it's where the reciprocal happens, when all the individuals combine to give their contribution to the state. As a social doctrine, as we were told they were talking about. A principle of social doctrine that all social bodies exist for the sake of the individual, so that the individuals are able to do so. Society should not take over, and what small societies can do, larger societies should not take over. Folks, the whole of the charity of the church has been adulterated and going to be imposed on everybody. This is reciprocal subsidiarity by the Roman Catholic Church definition. Why he just doesn't use subsidiarity even in that authority. The second meaning is a political system. Remember, I told you this is a political, this is a politics, not a church. This guy's a politician. It's a state. It's not a religion when they're talking on this regard. It's a principle of devolving decisions to the lowest practical level. This is an inversion of that whole thing this Pope talks about. They do not want individual power. They can't then have individual property nor property. It must be controlled. And if we understand that we see the note, the question in these terms that otherwise are mind-numbing, I mean, just eyes roll back in your head. Believe me, I've found myself on my chair coming back to numbers of times. Eyelids heavy, just falling asleep reading this stuff. It just puts you to sleep. Fighting through that, you really have to fight. Talk about a battle. That's the battle. Keeping your eyes open long enough to see what they're actually talking about. Because they always throw the punchline in right about the time your eyes close. That you see these terms, you can't look past them. And these terms could be as simple as the word of. You really have to look at what they're saying. That the social doctrine they were talking about was not subsidiarity, but the reciprocal subsidiary where individual contributes as an obligation and mortgage to the state. A mortgage on your life. If you didn't know, they were keeping track. So I want to remind you to go, again, for those of you that won't read, I'm just talking, I'm wasting breath. For those that go read, I'm asking you to go read these documents that you'll find in the broadcaster, all the speeches that you can tolerate. You don't have to listen to all of them, but get enough to understand. Read enough to either confirm what I'm telling you or have the knowledge that I'm wrong and can tell me that, first of all, so that I know, but that you can prove the condition. That's what you want to read through. Continue reading until you see it, whatever that is. I'm not here to tell you what that is for you. But I'd like to have you go back and read these different documents. Remember I was talking to you, I said this thing is being played out like a multi-dimensional chess game, multi-layers. Go back now and look at how many times in the A2030 or the Bar Association documents or even the speeches that you'll find that the popes do, like to the UN, and look for the word dimension. And you'll see how they lay out. Well, they are cognizant that there's dimensions to this condition that they're addressing, and they'll fabricate all kinds of dimensions, not necessarily so wrongly either, that you may or may not be aware of. That then when you see that they're aware of so-called dimensions they're working on against you, you might get a little bigger appreciation of what's against you. Look up the term human person. Knowing, as I say, that you need to go prove, and it's only a couple places you'll find the definition, that human is a monster, one without inheritable blood. You won't find that many places. In the text, in the statutes, you'll find that a human is addressed in the statutes only when it's dead. And the person is a legal fiction. I hate to use these words because it drives everybody nuts and they go off in the wrong direction. It's a legal fiction for the purposes of attaching to a man, in this case a woman too, legal obligations and duties. They call those rights, but they're not. They're legal obligations and duties, no different than that social mortgage that you have. And when you see this, you see these statutes across the nation, across the world, are all written in the context of this social doctrine coming on you. When you see that they don't regard the monster until it's dead in something that's fictional, and then it doesn't matter because it's dead, and it's dealt with as an animal, a monster, or an animal, or worse, a monster. And then when they deal with the human, it's a human with an obligation and a duty in the legal sense. It's a human person. Why wasn't person good enough? Why wasn't human good enough? when you start to dissect the statements and apply more technical language meanings in the jurisdiction they're coming from, like subsidiarity, what the heck's that? Then you might start to see what I see. It's like looking at a 3D picture, a poster. When you finally get your eyes just right, all of a sudden you see the little dragon holding the balloons. Only this one's coming to eat us, whether or not we hold our eyes just right. So, human person, look for that. It may not happen so often, but when it happens, you should ask, why is it even in there? Look up the term universal. There's three I came up with that I think if you go back and start seeing, read what they're talking to. It'll conform what I've been saying. It conforms my statements to what they've been doing in the document they've printed that shows you that when I relate all this to a multidimensional chess game, this war against us, the human dimension, remember the Jade Helm, man, it's all here. It all reflects each other. It's of the same source. I don't mean that in the New Agey way, but it's of the same source. It gives you an insight also. When you see a human person, you ask the question, why one or both? Why both? Why not? Why that? Why not man? Why not mankind? Why? They use that instead of something else. Your mind starts to expand. That you have. That's why I say possibilities and probabilities. It's more probable when they use human person that they're not talking about man. And then you got to think about, well, what does that mean now? What do they talk about? You may have to look before that. That's when you start reading before, when they build up to use that term. They may have defined it in how they spoke. That you have to get into understanding the terminology so it's not transparent to you what they're doing, because they're doing it. Whether you do anything to counter it, whether you think you're doing, whether you say I don't have to do something, as I said, you're going to be a lucky few that doesn't see the terror of this, and you might actually get out. You may have got yours and got done and out of here, and the rest of this horror will come on the future generations. And I guess that's okay too. I would hope, I don't know why, I would hope you care for people more than that. I don't know, I say I don't know why, because I'm not sure why I do. But somehow there's something inside that I do. Maybe it's just that third pillar for us, the spirit, that says we have something more here to do than just indulge in the body and the mind. For as much as I get in my mind, I mean, you got to think about this stuff. You got to dedicate your body, has to sit in a spot, has to start engaging the condition hours on end, focusing the mind on things that mind should never be focused on in order to defeat that thing that's come on us and trespassed on us, that invades us, that has taken us away from what I suspect is something we should be doing, which is not have to focus on all this stuff. But we came late to this war. We came naked to it as well. And we found ourselves in the middle of it. Some of us can curl up in a ball and let the sun beat us down into some shriveled up old leather bag, I suppose. Some people can just say, okay, I'll just give in. But I have it. I suppose it's in the world. It's in the creation, the world of the creation. This spirit that says, no, this is not right, and we can't let these people do this to us. Me, I can't let it happen to me, and therefore I can't let it allow it to happen to others, even if it's the point is that their decision is to go ahead and allow them to them. There's something wrong with it coming as a deception, as a non-disclosure. And I tell you, honestly here, I don't know why I care about all that, but I just do. There's something that's just not right, and I've decided I'm going to take that wrong and do what I can to make it right. And boy, I've been on a pretty wild ride, but I'm still here, and I'm still in it, and I'm still up against it. And that Pope, I also saw the state has put money to secure him. If he's such a peaceful guy, why are they securing him? If he had the protection of God and all, he's vicar of Christ on earth, don't you think he could see a problem coming and give forgiveness to the one who wanted to harm him? No, he's just a political guy, and we're spending money to protect him in the United States that should have never been spent on a religious leader like that. Because he isn't. Those are proof he isn't what he says he is. And maybe they should have took that so-called holy water that they were going to drink, and they should have stuck it in that little experiment to see what crystals formed coming from that water that he touched. They might have been surprised. No, they just drink it. Just consume, like the Kool-Aid we hear about, like the Jim Jones cult believers that we hear about. But I want you all to read these documents with a sense of urgency. They have something to tell us. It seems remote, but I'm telling you it's working locally. And as we have the numbers to do so, we impose the law, we impose the objective basis, we impose the independence against it, and it does not stand. It does not stand. But it does not stand because we're there standing against. We're standing up. The game board falls to the ground at these people who think they can, these psychopaths who think they can murder people, bomb them, cut the herd. They teach you to be a herd. And why wouldn't you? You're being bombed. You want your family to live. So they respond and they laugh that they got you to run in a natural way to escape death, certain death. And then become the natural resource they use to condemn you in your future to sustainable slavery, sustainable debt on a control structure that's outside of local, even outside the regional they talk about now. I was trying to get to you last week. So we get to the point now to start looking at some of these problems. What's the hypocrisy here, I guess, is the other point. What is the conundrums? What are the falsities that go on? What are the clues that we can have and derive from people who use words in one way yet aren't the people that they tell you they want you to be? That says that these people need to be gone. They need to be gone, and they need to be gone quickly. You can't tolerate them in your life, literally, because they're here to hurt us. But one of the anomalies that was pointed out, photos, Pope's border wall around Vatican. He wants to accept refugees. He wants to say that's okay. See, under the normal idea, where people are forced out of their grounds, and this is a legitimate problem of migration, immigration, that you would think, that, okay, we got to be compassionate to these people. But this Pope sits in a place, he's surrounded by a wall that he hasn't opened up to people. Well, he opened up to one Syrian family, I understand. That the churches he's condemning are not taking the refugees. He has not torn down the wall around the Vatican. And yet he wants you to do that for you. And I'm not speaking to the immigration thing. There's an immigration positiveness that needs to be embraced that's being rejected in us as well as Americans. So I'm not so much saying let's open the borders, but I'm also not saying let's close them. There has to be an ordered assimilation of people, and there's good reasons why. But the Pope has a border around the Vatican. Why does he sit and speak about everybody accepting refugees? Why does he only take in one? He talks about the poor church. Are you kidding me? How can he claim that? That it's a poor church when they spend millions on pedophile complaints to silence them? What is the truth about the condition that this guy is infallible in an office that's supposed to be charity and charitable? Well, he doesn't say whom anymore they're charitable to, besides obviously themselves, but maybe those that also aid them in their plunder. Why is there a wall around the Vatican? I think it's the article, if I see it right, he says tear down that wall. Tear down the hypocrisy. And maybe we'll be leaning towards you a little bit more. But that won't solve it either. This is just an open sign. Why does he press, as a scientist no less, Notwithstanding the politician he is, but the scientist that we found out in one of the last broadcasts in the article that he is. Why does he embrace a lie, a fraud? Why doesn't he condemn those that would call climate denier, people who want to question a climate denier? Why would he allow comments of people who deny climate change or global warming, anthropomorphic global warming? Question that. Why? And those that call those people heretics, why doesn't he condemn the calling of a heretic? Being a scientist that knows that the scientific process is to test those hypotheses such that they might be. In this case, it's an ideological notion that won't even muster the first review that they know that they're attacking against people that are scientists coming. They call them deniers. They're actually just scientists wanting to do the peer review study on the hypothesis. That I think we're seeing again, and it's not over because we have an influence here to example to people that while the Pope was in D.C., there was a Greenpeace rally. Another climate prediction fizzles. D.C. climate rally for Pope shrinks from expected 200,000 people to just hundreds. I can't be more overjoyed that I hope it's because people are not agreeing, but more to the point, not showing up was great, but you have to speak out against this plunder, against this fraud. This is what's driving the international policies right now, is this climate tax thing, what they're going to tie into the financial agencies that they speak about, which is going to be something that you're morally obligated as a mortgage on your social life under the social doctrine of reciprocity. Folks, it's there. He's telling us. This guy isn't who he claims to be. If he is, he's fallible because he's missed every point. He's taken unwise counsel. The people of which are now maybe not showing up to the rallies that these NGO special interests are talking about it. The Moral Action on Climate Network was what, along with the Earth Day Network League and Conservation Voters and Syria League and other groups, have timed the rally on the Mall the same day of the Pope's speech, and no one showed up compared to their numbers. Great. Now, what are you doing beyond to speak out against the fraud? We have more to do. This information isn't to sit complacent because happy someone else is doing it or we're not moving. These people are active in what they're doing. They're going to get a treaty this year if we don't speak out. They may get it despite our speaking out. Why? Because you don't have a voice if you haven't been using, and they've been making the authority, as I was telling you. They've been making the ongoing and building the layer by layer authority that you've been allowing all this time. If you don't speak out, they just accept that as consensus. Remember, the science for climate change is consensus. That's not science. Consensus is not science. And when the science came to review the consensus, they got called names. Which I understand now, even AP may be backing out, although not all the way. They're claiming they don't want to use the word climate denier. When who can? I mean, the climate changes, it's undeniable, right? But you understand they're not using that term. They want to make a new euphemism, which is just as derogatory because it's not on the point. The people that deny AWG are more not in denial of that more than to say, that hasn't been tested. I'm in denial. I'm denying the authorities say it's been proven. I'm denying in you as a consensus-based fraud. I'm denying in you the authority to say it is more than untested. And this is the kind of simple approaches that we get to use. The ramifications of which they want to knock this whole thing out, the poverty, attack on poverty. I told you they're going to put you on austerity. The working class is priced out of New Portland Housing was a story that came through, and it talks about this guy from Los Angeles going to Portland because he can't afford to go to Seattle. Seattle, remember, Nikki Ripahana was a communitarian, anti-communitarian league. That's where she got her foothold about all this nonsense in Seattle. Now, when she had to leave, she's now in Alaska. They went back to their own plan. Now you can't afford to live there. So these people, this Enrique Rios, a 26-year-old Los Angeles transplant, lives in Portland because it's the only place they can afford. His fiance and a small dog in a 250 square foot micro unit. They pay $995 for this little bitty space. They call them a-pod-ments. Remember I talked, you live in a pod? Here they are. A-pod-ments. Not apartments, but a-pod-ments. They call them hipster hovels. Give it a cute name. Maybe you'll accept it more. $950 to live in this little hole in an apartment complex that's supposedly be booming. And then that's your life. That's what all you need. You just need a cot, a communal kitchen, a bathroom, and that's for you and your fiance and your little dog. I'm surprised they let them have a little dog, because the green people say that's a carbon footprint bigger than you make. This is, in fact, I looked it up. Footprint Northwest LLC bought the home that was on the site of the Northwest Thurman Street at 2013, replacing it with a 5-story, 54-unit place that they now charge $950 to this little bitty 400 square foot thing or something. You're paying for the privilege to live in basic necessities that is under underneath this sustainable habitat. That the next day the industry comes out and wants to say, well, but wait a minute, affordable housing, well, that depends on how you define it. Affordable housing is how you define it. And here it is, exactly. It really depends on how you define affordable. But definition is that poverty is something, austerity will be this new lifestyle. You live in a pod. And you'll have your iPod in order to keep track of where you are 24/7. In fact, when someone comes in, they'll be able to make up where you were, and then maybe someone will be interested in you and collect you up when you walk outside next time. All unknown to you. What is affordable? Is going to be what you submit to right now that you allow them to put on you. That you will be forced into being an urbanite, or you will die. And you'll be happy to have this little pod they give you, this open-air prison apartment pod that they give you, because that's the only thing going. And they'll have gotten there because you were crickets. And then you're going to get there and you're going to hear crickets anyway. So get used to the crickets. The writing's on the wall, all the documentation's in front of us to tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if we don't stop the ugly and we don't arrest the bad, there is no good. There is no good in the future generations. There's never going to be a present generation. The present generation is already sustainable slavery, under sustainable debt. And they just use that money to make a new sustainable place. They went from LA to Seattle, now it's Portland, next it'll be some smaller urban area they develop. So thank you for listening to me today. We appreciate that you tune in. Pass the podcast around, the podcast. There's a prison everywhere, folks. That's why I called it the blogcaster page. I can't handle the term podcast. Can you see maybe now why? That the fact of our imprisonment is everywhere. But thank you for tuning in. Donate where you can to the servers, reallibertymedia.com, and Grimner and all the work he does, worldtruth.org, social network. We got more freedom there than Facebook for sure. Donate to the cause there, and they cause the servers to be allowing my voice to get out. And Jules over at UCY.tv, just pulling together a lot of decent hosts, and I hope you did hear Ron today. Again, consistent with what I'm saying in different ways. So. And Vince following up. I always like to have live right after me. So thank you, Vince, for doing that. I appreciate that. And as Vince gets his top subject matter together, stay tuned for whomever may be coming. And I'll see you next week.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
Opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.